To the United Nations Association Southern Chapter annual meeting. I'd certainly like to thank the Parkdale Public Library for all their help and books. Thanks for coming and spending a little bit of your precious time with us this evening. Whether you're here or in person on Zoom, please consider joining us also in many of our future events. We're going to start our meeting with a brief ecumenical prayer by Joy Muir of Armadale Interfaith Center.
Shalom, shalom, peace. Our God, the creator and sustainer of our lives, we invoke your presence and ask your blessing upon this meeting and all who participate. Open our hearts to your love as we seek to understand and serve our fellow men and women. Open your minds, our minds, to your will for the good of all mankind. May we remember that our common humanity unites us. May our differences inform us, bring us deeper understanding, and show us how we can support one another. May this meeting be an instrument of peace and healing between nations and peoples. Amen.
Thank you. As we have all learned together over the many years, all about the world's complex problems, sometimes it's not always clear how a little person in Southern Illinois can make any kind of difference in all of the world's problems and solutions for the United Nations. So, as you're going to learn over the next few minutes, our chapter educates and advocates, but we also relate to each other. So yes, you as an individual person can support the United Nations mission simply by your actions with each other. Sometimes that's very difficult in our trying times. This week, we've celebrated two major United Nations events: the International Day of Human Fraternity on February 4th, and Interfaith Harmony, which is February 1st through 7th. And I'm going to share a few words from the UN Secretary General Guterres that he talked about this week. This year is of particularly big importance in light of COVID-19 pandemic, which has upended all assumptions of life on Earth, causing never-before-faced challenges worldwide. Recognizing the imperative need for dialogue among different faiths and religions to enhance mutual understanding, harmony, and cooperation among people, the General Assembly encourages all states to spread the message of interfaith harmony and goodwill in the world's churches, mosques, synagogues, temples, and other places of worship during this week, on a voluntary basis and according to their own religious convictions and traditions, and even if you aren't part of a bigger interfaith group as an individual person. From deepening poverty and widening inequities to conquer division and mistrust, Mr. Guterres said that our human family faces a cascade of challenges. To confront them, we need to challenge those who exploit differences, traffic and hate, and instill fear of the other in anxious hearts. Mr. Gutierrez believes those heinous acts are violations of human rights and affronts to the values of the United Nations. And he concluded with an appeal to stand firm against bigotry, wherever and whenever we see it. Let us recognize our diversity as a richness that strengthens us all. Let us build bridges between the faiths, inspired by our common humanity. Let us come together in solidarity to create a more inclusive, peaceful, and just world for all. Now, we will get down to business. You have a copy of the Secretaries report from last year and the Treasurer's report from last year that we need to approve and accept. Are there any objections to the report? Hearing no objections, the reports are accepted. Financial Secretary's report. We'll hear from you next.
Okay, this is the calendar year 2021 financial report. We began the reporting period with a bank balance of $2,903.27. We had a revenue of $527.50. We only spent $200 last year, which was a donation to the UNHCR, and we end up the year with $3,250.77. That's actually a little bit higher than our 5-year average for a year, so we're doing pretty well, but we didn't do a lot this last year because of COVID. The 5-year average is $2,600, so we're a little bit above that right now. Probably deal with that next year. The projected budget for next year totals a number of different revenue streams. There's a Better World Fund, which is membership dues which come back. So when you join UNA, your membership dues go up to the main office, but then you get a portion back. So that's a big part of our revenue. Projected $400 for next year. That's probably a modest projection. Donations from members, various things, offsetting the cost of different things, and fundraising. And then our expenditures, some standard things that we didn't do this year because of COVID that we will probably do next year include Model United Nations, so we support the students there, the UNA, RSO, SIU, a number of different programs, an annual leadership conference and so forth. So I projected we would end up with about $2,200. It's pretty rough, $2,232.77.
Okay, now we need to vote on accepting that report. Are there any, all in favor? All opposed? Okay, the Treasurer's report is accepted. Next, we will have elections of officers. Olga, can you come up and she will lead the election and give the report.
Thank you, President Carroll. Presenting the report of the nominating committee on behalf of Cindy Wise and myself as chair. For the office of president, Philip Bibrody. For recording secretary, Helen Ashrath. For treasurer, Nathan Stuckey. You have all heard the report of the nominating committee. We're now ready to proceed with nominations and elections. For the office of president, Philip Eagley. Are there any further nominations?
We asked people
Yes, I'm going to say,
to.
we're going to vote by voice. So stand up if you're here rising, and while you're raising the hand for those who are online, attending a meeting virtually. On chat. For the office of president, Philip Eagley, are there any nominations from the floor? For the office of recording secretary, Helen Ashrath. Are there further nominations? For the office of treasurer, Nathan Stuckey. Are there further nominations? There are no nominations from the floor. We're ready, and we will vote on this for all of their 30 offices. So, if nominations, please rise. Raise your hand. All right. You have elected the officers, these 3 officers for the coming year. Congratulations. Thank you.
Substitute for Elaine Jakowski, who I understand was snowed in. So this is a report of some of the activities from last year. First of all, thanks to the Coverdale Public Library, Jennifer has been incredibly helpful in a number of these programs we did by Zoom and made our lives so much easier. So thank you. We had some collaborations that we really appreciated over the last year with the School of Law, the Social Work Sustainability Commission, the United Nations RSO on campus, the UNA, UN, National Chapter, the Cultural Student Organization at SIU. There's a close cooperation between what we do and activities at the university. But sort of a quick rundown just by name of activities that we've done over the years, just to get an idea of the breadth of some of the activities at UNA. In January, we participated in the International Criminal Court. In February, we had UNA Bingo Night fundraiser for Nothing But Nets, which is a program to sort of help supply nets to reduce malaria in Africa. In March, we had hosted a program really celebrating the life of Eleanor Roosevelt. It was one of the original signatories that really pushed in the United States the Declaration of Human Rights. In April, we did a week of UNA Advocacy. In August, we had Sustainability Fair, which we also supported. In September, we had a program on what has the United Nations done for me lately, which was a program by Terrence Blackburn, which was really wonderful. It brought the power of the UN and the ways it intersects with our personal lives just right down to the Carbondale level. It was quite wonderful. In October, we had a movie watching about human trafficking and the UN Day celebration of the UN Youth Observer. And then in November, the CARES Carbondale response to welcome refugees. And in December, the Human Rights Award, which we gave this year to the Carbondale Warming Center for their wonderful work in our local community, helping members of the community. So that's what we did last year. This is Elaine's report that I'm just standing in. Thank you.
Yes, so welcome everyone. My name is Cindy Byes, and I've been asked to just speak for a quick moment about a couple of programs we have coming up. And so our first program is that we're actually reading a book together for the first time. You're all invited to join us. It was called Defying Convention, U.S. Resistance to the UN Treaty on Women's Rights. It has been a longstanding goal of the United Nations Association to have the United States ratify the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, also known as CEDAW. And this book is written by Lisa Valdez, who is a professor at Dartmouth, about the U.S. position on CEDAW. And so we invite you to read the book, if you can. But whether you read the book or not, you're welcome to join us for a discussion of CEDAW with the author. Lisa Valdez is going to join us via Zoom in March, the third week of March, around the 22nd of March, to lead a discussion with us about CEDAW and women's rights in honor of Women's History Month. So we hope that you will join us for that. And then I was also asked to announce that April 4th through the 8th at SIU, we have a number of international activities, including a parade on the 4th, a food festival on April 6th, and a cultural show on April 8th. And I have participated in these before, and they are not to be missed. So I invite you all to join us. Thank you.
Olga, we need you to come on up again. Olga will speak on the advocacy efforts.
First, I would like to say a big thank you to all our members, the students of the SIU Model UN and SIU, as well as the UNA campus chapter of SIU, the CCHS Model UN, and our Southern Illinois community for using opportunities and resources to meaningfully advocate in support of a strong US-UN relationship in 2021. The UN Day theme last year, creating a blueprint for a better future, inspires us to continue to work together to make an even greater impact this year. You will find full details about UNA USA Advocacy for 2022, the agenda, on our website, unausa.org. In 2022, our priorities for advocacy are global health, climate change, human rights, and the sustainable development goals. We call them SDGs. From protecting and advancing human rights here at home and around the world, to driving programs on sustainable development, we have opportunities to explore and learn the issues. We're always informed on them before we take action to support the UN work to build a better world. Global health, another goal of the year, priority. The COVID-19 pandemic has shown us just how interconnected we are and why working in tandem with the UN to solve global challenges like COVID-19 is essential. Climate action. We cannot turn our backs on the facts. We're in a race against time to act on climate. We will be sending a message to our elected officials on the U.S. Climate Alliance and ask them to support a healthier and more sustainable planet, our world. And the next one is human rights. UNA USA members are dedicated stewards of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and milestone document that seeks to secure and advance the fundamental rights for everyone, everywhere. As advocates, we must continue to roll up our sleeves and call injustice whenever and wherever we see. In conclusion, we can no longer believe that our well-being stops at our coastline. It is UNA USA conviction Americans must become active members of the international community, working effectively and methodically for best outcomes for all of the world's citizens. Active engagement of individuals who are well informed and passionate about the justice, economic, environmental, and human complexities of our world is the only way to succeed. It is UNA USA's mission. We know you will join in this endeavor. And the SDGs, and I think all of you can get a copy of them on a card on the table, for those of you who may not have one. The 17 development goals, provide a blueprint for global progress. Each of us plays a role in advancing the goals. And with fewer than 9 years, we're in 2022, and it's supposed to be achieved by 2030. So through the 9 years before the 2030 deadline, the world must scale up its efforts to set back on track. We think globally and learn how we can advance progress on the SDGs in our own community. Thank you for joining us in this effort.
Thank you, Golda. Before we get on with our panel presentation, if anyone would like to take a chance, their chance now to grab some refreshments. I'm sorry for all of the people on Zoom. And we will finish getting the cameras set.
Testing again.
Okay, good.
I have to start by saying thank you to the Carbondale Public Library and Jennifer Ruffner in particular. Ronnie Laforge seems to be our backup today as well, making sure that we have technology that works and that we can do this meeting and program in a hybrid format. So thank you everyone for being here today. Again, my name is Cindy Bives. I am on the board of the Southern Illinois chapter of the United Nations Association. And we are just so happy to have you here and to have this wonderful panel of speakers here today to teach us a little bit more about Afghanistan and what is happening there. Our program title today is the United Nations and Afghanistan, Connecting Global Roads to Local Goals. I'm sure that many of you know the United States was involved in an ongoing conflict in Afghanistan for 20 years. We initially attacked Afghanistan in the fall of 2001, shortly after the terrorist attacks here. And we have been in Afghanistan until this past fall when the United States withdrew. And our rapid withdrawal created a new humanitarian crisis and refugee crisis in Afghanistan. Since that withdrawal, millions of Afghans are starving. The healthcare system is collapsing and wages are plummeting. Other speakers this afternoon will address in more detail what is happening in Afghanistan and how it came to be. But I want to start by providing a little bit of information about the United Nations work in Afghanistan, which has been going on for several decades, long before the present crisis. Then I will introduce our fabulous panel of speakers, and I will ask each of them to address the situation in Afghanistan with respect to their own expertise. I believe this will work.
Might need to turn it on the side.
Is it there for me? Yeah. There we go. And go ahead and advance again. And you can keep going.
Okay.
All right, so the UN Development Program has been working across Afghanistan for more than 50 years on challenges related to climate change, resilience, gender issues, governance, health, livelihoods, and rule of law. It works to connect the Afghan government and its people with resources and information they need to drive their development according to their own policies, as well as in accordance with the Sustainable Development Goals. UNDP coordinates the work of 21 different UN agencies working in Afghanistan, which are grouped into 6 thematic areas: normative, education, food security, nutrition and livelihoods, health, return and reintegration, and the rule of law. Together, they form one country team whose overall vision and work is detailed in the UN Development Assistance Framework. This framework outlines the key challenges facing Afghanistan, as well as strategies for management, coordination, implementation, and evaluation. And if you could go to the next slide. I prepared just a few examples of some of the work in Afghanistan to get us started thinking about what they're doing today. And the first one has to do with climate change and resilience. The UN Environmental Program, or UNEP's mission, is to provide leadership and encourage partnerships for caring for the environment by inspiring, informing, and enabling nations and peoples to improve their quality of life without compromising that for future generations. Next slide, please. The UN has been working on gender equality in Afghanistan. Unfortunately, the progress made by the UN Development Fund for Women and related UN agencies towards achieving greater respect for women's rights in Afghanistan is being quickly eroded under the Taliban rule. UN agencies have withdrawn many of the women who have been leading those agencies from public spaces because they cannot protect their own staff, much less protect Afghan women at the current time. And so this is an area where much more work needs to be done, as in many of these areas. Next slide, please. Protecting refugees. The UN High Commissioner for Refugees' mandate is to provide international protection and seek durable solutions for refugees, including the 5 million Afghans who have been displaced from their homes. These are just a few examples of the vital work that's being done by the UN in Afghanistan. I now want to turn our discussion over to our panelists. And our first panelist today is Dr. Charles Ruffner. Dr. Ruffner is a professor of forestry at Southern Illinois University. He is originally from Pennsylvania, and after his service in the Army, Charles put himself through forestry school at Penn State and has been on the faculty here at SIUC since the summer of 1999. He enjoys training new land managers and prescribed burn crew members through his many activities with forestry students. His professional interests include forest fire ecology, international forestry and development, and historical land use. I'm going to have him speak first, and then I will introduce our next panelist. So please come on up, Dr. Ruffner. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Cindy. I want to thank the committee for inviting me, Dr. Phil Everly, my great colleague from the College of Agricultural Sciences, for giving the invitation to me over the holiday break. And as I said here, I just want to get across to you how generational this actually is, this SIU effort in Afghanistan. Phil, you know, as a previous generation in the College of Ag, I came up under him and others, Opal Myers, one of the great leaders in our early projects in Afghanistan. And we trained a bunch of young Afghan men and women to do agricultural work in Afghanistan. And many of those young people are still doing that. So I'm so encouraged to see the young students here that are coming over and encouraging them to get the greatest education. So without further ado, I'm going to talk a little bit about, is the screen's being shown, right? Okay, great. Because I don't really have a lot of notes or anything, but I don't have any animation. So Salukhi's working in Afghanistan. We've been there since the 60s, helped develop a lot of the ag programs. The Faculty of Agriculture in Kabul helped develop the agriculture school in Peshawar, Pakistan. And by 2005, after the invasion, USAID was looking to bring in some agricultural specialists to do some work in Afghanistan. So pictures like on the left, my good colleague, Alan Walters, crop specialist, myself and John Ruthner in the center, inspecting some apple orchards. And then a group of us in Mazar Sharif on one of our first trips into northern Afghanistan. So the next slide. First of all, just talking a little bit about the agricultural economy in Afghanistan. These are some 2012 estimates, but essentially 12% of the land is considered arable in the country. The population is 70% rural, about 30% urban. Agriculture contributes about 38 to 40% of the GDP in the country. And about, I believe, 80 to 85% of all workers in the country are in the agricultural sector. So agriculture is extremely important across the economy and society of Afghanistan. Next slide. So USAID, one of the programs under UN, or excuse me, the Department of State got us involved, and there's developed all kinds of programs across the Office of Agriculture. One of ours is called AWAT, the Afghanistan Water and Agricultural Tech Transfer Program. We, along with 4 or 5 other universities from across the United States, tried to develop an integrated, holistic approach to watershed management to try and increase everything from crop production to range production to water quality, water retention, water delivery, erosion control, lots of things that were into this rehabilitating landscapes that we're trying to do across Afghanistan. Many of us faculty members deployed multiple times between 2005 and 2013 during the AWOC program, it's all the way up to 2011. Next slide. At the time, a lot of our projects were looking at trying to protect rangelands. Rangelands are basically rain fed, they don't get a lot of moisture throughout the year, and huge herds of animals rely on this rangeland. And there's not a lot of trained agriculturalists or agronomists out there looking at rotating their stock or anything across there. So we did a lot of that, trying to teach farmers about rotating their stock, rotating grazing on their rangelands. Next slide, please. Dr. Broniger and our lead engineer here, I think I have Dr. Barnett, he comes in later on because we trained his son as a forester and now we're shooting MVP, but trying to control the erosion on the hillsides there is very steep and many of the trees have been removed. So terracing, cut fringe building, a lot of things were developed to try and slow down the erosion and then get trees planted along the hills. I have some pictures, some follow-on pictures that his son has provided me last year or so of many of our projects and programs make it better actually green on hillsides coming up. Next slide. We did a lot of field missions at this time. We were attached to different military units, doing all kinds of things, ag production, ag economy, looking at watershed rehabilitation, dam abatement, planting trees, planting grasses, rangeland management. We tried to do it all. We were like the kind of dirt foresters in Afghanistan. Up there, inspecting some of our plants. There on the upper left, you see us would be inspecting plantings of trees and villages. Those were for shade, those were for animal grounds, those were for watering, building structure, for building structures. So those years in Afghanistan in 2005 and 2011, many of us drew on those experiences and were asked by the Foreign Ag Service in the USDA to build a program called the ADTs, the Agribusiness Development Teams. And these were under a rubric called the ADAP, or Agricultural Development for Afghanistan Pre-Deployment Training. And these trainings were done largely at Fresno State. They were the lead on this, and we went there and trained special operations soldiers and sailors to go into Afghanistan and do many of these types of agricultural projects in very insecure areas. We were trying to build the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Rural Rehabilitation and Development, the Ministry of Waters. We were trying to get some ministry people to go into the field, into the villages, and interact with the people that kind of depend on them for central service. Stimulating agricultural economies, working with pistachio growers and grazing developers and almond growers and producers who can move the stuff around, because after all, farmers just want to get their product to market. We trained and fielded a lot of ADTs through the years. I once had a handle on all the numbers of the agribusiness development teams. Those were citizen soldiers, basically National Guard bureaus that fielded large agricultural teams that went into different regions of the country. Next slide. So the ADPs were there to build agricultural institutes, again, working with almond producers and fruit producers to try to get product to the market, get better feed. We did some trials while we were there. We actually got into the timber. We didn't get into the timber business, but we tried to understand the timber business. A lot of it was going to China, Russia, Pakistan, just basically being logged really off the mountainsides, and that's continuing to today. We did a lot of training with some of the traditional herdsmen and the water keepers, the Murons. These are now women trained to take care of the water rights of different agricultural fields. It's a very old skill, normally passed down from father to son. We built some science into that training and drinking thousands of grams through the years. Next. Did a lot of extension outreach, our extension system is outstanding. Tried to get the same type of extensions to the applicants, and we tried to build young men and women who had agricultural backgrounds and get them out into the fields, learn to interact with farmers, figure out what the farmers' needs are, what their issues are, and then get some information back to them or post their agriculture. So in 2011, I got the bright idea to take a sabbatical from the university just for a year in Afghanistan. So I took a year off and became the Zabul, that's a province in southeastern Afghanistan, northeast of Kandahar. I took a post there with the Mississippi Agribusiness Development Team. It was the fourth agribusiness development team in that area of operation. We were in to build on a lot of previous projects. So my job is to train and mentor extension agents. We kind of get them to come out and fumble. They had some sort of degree in agriculture or forestry. We train them up to assess crops, assess forest conditions and things of that nature. I did a lot of erosion control projects, kind of like old CCC level projects, stacking rocks and doing control, check dams and things of that nature just to slow the water down. And then I did a bunch of water management plans for a couple of the big watersheds for the Corps of Engineers while I was there as well. Another slide, please. Some of our projects that were actually, great projects. We did a bunch of demonstration farms. We set up some ag extension farms to bring in farmers from the area to come and see how, not modern farming, but better farming practices could be done, more efficient practices. It was always very simple, keep it simple there as well. In the center picture, I worked with a bunch of villages to increase their water output from their creses and their aqueduct systems from the mountains. And then on the right-hand side, we did I believe that was a wheat trial that the UN had given us some UN seed on the left-hand side, and we did them in some actual statistical trials. We showed that the UN seed was far better, far more productive, far more valuable than the local variety on the right there. So just sort of things we did there. Next slide, please. I did a lot of local farmer trainings. This is soil. This is what you need in soil to grow crops. This is how much water you put on those crops. I did a lot of village visits with farmers to talk to them about their soils, do on-farm assessments, actually I found compost on a lot of farms there. So you would think that they weren't that far ahead, but they were actually utilizing the whole village's worth of compost to increase their productivity. It's outstanding. And then I was telling Cheryl, we did a bunch of radio ag dramas. The military was doing radio in a box, and we would do these 15 to 30-second vignettes of two farmers talking in the marketplace about this type of wood or that type of wood. It was kind of funny and like almost show business. Next slide, please. So in the end, I want to leave you with some positives. This last August, a lot of us over there just suffered kind of like collective PTSD of all the work that we did, but we really did a lot of good stuff. We guided some great waterway cleaning and maintenance for thousands of miles and thousands of people getting clean water. This young man in the middle is Imal. He's the son of the engineer that we worked with. We got him through forestry school, and he became a UNDP field rep and got me a bunch of pictures these lower ones on the bottom here of some of our pistachio plantings. Unfortunately, he's now removed from Afghanistan, is now in England pursuing a master's degree. Not unfortunately, but unfortunate for the UNDP in Afghanistan and furthering these types of projects. He's no longer there. Next slide, please. So some threats to development. Before Amal got out, he took 30, 40 pictures of like rampant logging up in the mountains, and it's going on daily. So there's rampant logging up there. All the logs are getting, cut up, put on trucks,
and they're gone. No one's getting revenue in that country from those logs. The Afghan people are not getting any tax dollars from those logs being lost. It's terrible. There's still the issue of tragedy of the commons in that area when you have no one really controlling the rangeland or the forests. The winter takes all the spoils. Lack of now international support. All the funding has dried up because we pulled out, unfortunately. And in a way, it's really a big brain drain on the technicians that we've trained over the last 20, 25 years. So good and bad news. That's all I have. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Our next panelist is Cheryl Barnett, who recently retired from the Army National Guard in June 2021 at the rank of Major. She served in Afghanistan from 2008 to 2009 with the U.S. Army. Cheryl also worked at SIU at the Center for International Development for 7 years, which continued to feed her interest in international affairs and humanitarian outreach. She is currently a project manager consultant with the private sector. Please welcome Cheryl Barnett.
Hi. First of all, thank you so much for having me. And I'm really excited to be here, and I'm really excited to see all of your faces. I'm going to deviate a little, which I probably shouldn't do, but as I heard Dr. Ruffner talking about what he did in Afghanistan, and I hear Cindy Byes talk about some of the work that she's done, and we'll hear a little bit more about an organization here in Carbondale in a few minutes that we've done for the international community. And then I see all these people here that are interested in the United States and the UN and how we interact with the rest of the world. I'm so excited that you're all here, and I am just really encouraged by that. And I'm really encouraged by our little community and our university. I went to SIU, and I am so proud of SIU in this moment. Again, to hear about our professor who's been there, and we've got students from Afghanistan, and our CECIL program, the Center for International or English as a Second Language, is taking Afghan students as we bring them here to the university or here to the Carbondale area. And they are waiving fees and working with these students the best that they can. And I'm just so excited by that. I think it's totally amazing that a little community like Carbondale out in the middle of Southern Illinois is doing all these things for refugees and cares so much about the Afghan people. So just to talk a little bit about my relationship to the UN and Afghanistan. Again, I was in Afghanistan in 2008 and 2009 with the 33rd Infantry Brigade Combat Team. It was the largest mobilization of National Guard soldiers in Illinois since World War II. And we went with Combined Joint Task Force Phoenix was the task force that we were on. And that was a part of the ISAF, International Security Assistance Force mission. I just threw a lot of acronyms, so I apologize. So we went with the ISAF mission, and the ISAF was mandated by the UN. So the UN put NATO in command and said, we need a security assistance force in Afghanistan to provide security for the Afghans. And the purpose of that was to enable the Afghan government to secure the nation and never again provide a safe harbor for terrorism. So, you know, I went with an infantry brigade, and we were there to provide security. But what we ended up doing was a lot of development, right? We did a lot of nation building, and that's what Dr. Ruffner did as well. And an aside, I would be surprised if our paths didn't cross in some way, at least in some intersection, because we did a wheat seed fruit sapling project. There would be bought seeds and saplings. I was out in Herat, so I don't know, probably not the one you're talking about, but we funded projects like that. So in 2008, I was a signal officer, which is communications. I was trained to do the radios and computers and that kind of thing. But I got offered the opportunity to instead administer the humanitarian aid budget. So essentially, we just had this big pot of money, and it was, the purpose was to use that money for emergent humanitarian need in Afghanistan. And so I jumped on that chance. I thought, in 20 years, that's the impact that I wanted to have in Afghanistan, is not fiddling with radios, but actually trying to do some good in the country. And we really did. But again, it was the United States Army that was doing all this development. So we learned a lot of things about sustainable development, right? We learned this is just a general lesson. It's not my personal experience, but it's an experience that I've learned about so that when we administered the money, we could do it a little bit more efficiently. But things like, an Army infantry officer goes into an area and they see that there's, people are hungry and they're in need of a lot of supplies in the area. So this officer goes, okay, great. Well, we'll get them some food. So they buy a bunch of food, they have it shipped in, they hand it out, and they think, job well done. Well, if they find out, of course, that's not sustainable. They find out that actually that in the long run hurt the economy, right? Because they brought the food from outside of the area. So then the people the farmers weren't able to sell their crops there. And so we think the next step is, okay, well, next time we'll buy it on the local economy. That'll put some money into their economy. That'll help. Well, then they find out actually that's not really that great either, because then we inflate the prices in the area. The US government buys a whole bunch of, rice and beans and that kind of thing for an inflated price, and then it makes it harder for regular people to buy their own food. So at this point, the Army infantry commander goes, well, I don't know what to do then, I'm trying to learn here. So for me, that's actually, the whole problem is not just lessons learned and just applying sustainable development practices and policies. To me, the bigger issue is that it was the military was there to provide security and assistance, but really they were calling the shots, they were running the show. And there are a lot of organizations out there already that know how to do this stuff. USAID would have known not to do those things. There are NGOs that would have known much better how to nation build and how to develop. So the reason that I talk about that is that I think a lot of people, when the crisis really devolved in Afghanistan in August, a lot of people reached out to me from my perspective. People just wanted to know how I felt about it, what I thought, because I'd been there and I have many opinions. And what I came up with is that we can all place blame all day long, right? That's what we try to come to the root of the problem. To me, the root of the problem was letting the military do security and develop the country and not let people who know how to do it. But at the end of the day, that doesn't do anything. I can pat myself on the back and walk away and feel really brilliant about my theory that I came up with. But if you're like me, you're also sort of action oriented. I want to know, okay, so is there something we can do or is there not? Is there something that I, Cheryl Barnett in Southern Illinois, can do or is there not? And that's probably a question that you all have too. And so I decided that for myself, we see a lot of crises in the country and all over the world, and I find them really upsetting, the Syrian refugees and crisis at the border. This couldn't be just one more thing that I scrolled past. Personally, I couldn't just say, it's horrible. I place blame. Okay, great. I feel better. But I can't do anything about it because I'm just Cheryl Barnett. I just couldn't do that. So I started doing a lot of research and trying to find something that I could do. I reached out to some former colleagues at SIU. I got in contact with a couple of students and I tried to help them as much as I could. And I'm so happy that they're here. But then I found that there's a group in Carbondale called CARES. And they are actively working to bring refugees to resettle in Carbondale, Illinois. So yes, in Carbondale, Illinois, there is something that you can do. My thought is that we were partners with the Afghan people, right? When I was there, I wore a patch on my sleeve that had the Afghan and the American flag on it, and I took that very seriously. We're partners with them, and even though we're not still in the country, we can't work with them there. There are lots of Afghans that are here now. There are, tens of thousands of Afghans, bases across the United States. And they need to be resettled. And that's not an easy task. I mean, we all know it's hard enough to get a good job ourselves, and English is our primary language. Can you imagine coming from Afghanistan? If I went to another country, it'd be really hard for me to figure out how to find a job, find an apartment, figure out healthcare. And that's the same way for these folks. And also they've just been through the most traumatizing event and they've left their homes. So the good news is, again, we've got some flyers, and the folks that are working in this CARES group are here tonight. I'm working with this group. We've got Sally, and we've got Jim Dooley, and we've got Cindy Bies, and we've got some flyers up here. So if you're interested in just what things you can do, I really would, and they're on the table as well. I really, really would love to encourage you to look up the group and at least follow us on Facebook. It's not a huge commitment. It's just a lot of people in Carbondale that have a lot of resources. They know a lot of stuff, right? We're gonna hear from the city of Carbondale, who is hugely supportive of this and is doing a lot of really good work. So if you follow, maybe you'll find that there's something that your particular expertise could really help with, right? So we're not asking you to give $5,000, and we're not, although if you would, that'd be great. But we're not asking you to put in 40 hours a week, nothing like that. If you follow the group and you care, then you might just find that there's a little way here or there that you could help, right? So again, we need affordable housing for people. We need to be able to get in front of groups and talk to them and tell them about the group so that we can raise funds to bring them. And you'll hear about sponsor circles. One of the sponsor circles has already gotten through that Cindy Bies is working on, and it's so exciting. They're bringing a family here. So there's already a family coming. There are other sponsor circles started, and there is something that we can do for actual human beings in Carbondale, Illinois. So again, if you would, just follow on Facebook, look at the CARES flyer. I agree with, Dr. Ruffner. It's good news and it's bad news. We did a lot of work. At the end of the day, no matter what you think about the U.S. involvement or any kind of political issues, you can still do something positive without, without having all the answers to the world's problems. So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Cheryl's passion for the Afghan people always comes through. So next, we are really privileged to have two Afghan students from SIU join us this evening. The first one who will speak with you is Shawkat Muslimwal, and he worked as a researcher and data analyst in the development sector with the government of Afghanistan and multiple international NGOs for 4 years. He has evaluated the impact of multiple development projects and conducted multiple nationwide studies for the Afghan government. Mr. Muslimwal has a degree in econometrics and statistics. He is currently a Fulbright scholar at SIU and is pursuing his master's degree in economics. So please join me in welcoming Shawkat Muslimwal.
Hello, everyone. It was 2001 that, and I was a kid at school year, and my grandfather took me to, for school registration. It was the first day in school, and when I was registered here, so the school administration gave me a bag, and it was, I think, 3 notebooks with a 4 or 5 pencils, a sharpener, and all the tools that they need for a first year school kid. And all of them were labeled by like the blue label under the UNICEF. So that was the first day that I was introduced to school and introduced to the UN. So I'm pretty sure that UN introduced millions of people in Afghanistan and also around the world to education, and also rescued millions of people from the starvation and from the hardship of their life. And I'm also pretty sure that on behalf of all of those good actions were people like you that supported the United Nations, and through them, all of the people in Afghanistan. So thank you very much. I really appreciate your gathering, your support, and your sense of love for Afghan people. Really appreciate it, and it means a lot to us. So, well, if we come to the like specific projects in Afghanistan, I will talk first in one specific project that I and my colleague Ali Shahidi we were both in the same team in Afghanistan. We were working with the Department of Rural Development, and one of the project was WRDP, Women Economic Empowerment and Rural Development Program. And it was actually a World Bank program, but the UNDP was a kind of supporting the program in Afghanistan. So some of you may understand, and the professors here, they've worked in the country. One of the biggest problem is in Afghanistan, actually the economic problem is that people do not have access to finance. When they face any challenges, that they have access to a banking system, a rigorous finance system to use that in their emergency situations. So UNDP and World Bank designed a program that we have to go to the villages and collect some groups and establish some saving groups and saving associations. So we were going to the villages and collaborating pupils to make their own saving associations. And after like a while, when they were meeting all together and saving their own money, and we were evaluating them whether they're doing it correctly or not, we were providing them a seed capital, like a couple thousands of dollars. And then we were training them how to use this capital and how to just give loans to others and just get it back and do the same cycle. And the main purpose that was under the project was that each village they should have a kind of associations that provide financing in hardships and in bad situations. So at the end of the project, I think we were able to reach to almost 70,000 households. It's a huge community, a lot of districts, and it was a very big project. And it was expanding, and in general, it had a very good impact. We saw that in all the villages that we implemented the project, people had access to finance. So usually if a family in Afghanistan, if they face any problem, let's suppose, for example, their son is injured and they need to go to the hospital, so there's no insurance, they have to pay from their pocket, and they need, for example, $1,000. So the only thing that they have to do is they have to sell their asset. They have to sell either the land or the animal they have. This is the normal situation. And what our project did was that they could ask for a loan and do their own, deal with their own situation after they pay that back, which was very successful. And the moment that we were coming to the United States, I and Ali Shahidi, my colleague here, he was my supervisor, and we were doing an experimental analysis, a randomized experiment trial to actually test whether it really works or not. But he got admission here at SIU and me too, so we didn't have the chance to just continue the program and we get back here. So it was one of the projects that UN was supporting, and besides that, we were there and we could see that a lot of programs were implementing there just for supporting the economy of Afghanistan. And because if you put the structure of the economy of Afghanistan, the biggest problem is that we're lacking a very basic fundamental infrastructure for development. Let's suppose, for example, the drinking water. So at 2020, we had almost 50% of our population, they did not have access to clean drinking water, which is a very basic need. Also, like roads, access to markets. More than 40 people do not have access to roads all the season. There are a lot of villages, if there's winter, so they're blocked from the market. They cannot travel to the market, to the hospitals. So they're very basic needs that they have every government or everyone who wants to work in Afghanistan, they have to address it before thinking about the market development and welfare and more advanced measures that we need for a human being in this 21st century. And also it's a very big challenge for the SDGs as well, because SDGs also, the standard on, the SDG needs like a very good infrastructure to reach the point. So what I mean is that, yeah, United Nations worked very well and they implemented a lot of projects, that one of the examples that I see, but what happened in August 2021, the fall of our government, it almost challenged all of those efforts that was designed by United Nations and everyone that was working here. So as of now, whatever, if I talk about the current situation, there are just numbers and like a big picture of the country. No one can tell what exactly is going on in the country and how that affects every individual in the country. It's very hard to bring that into a statistical language or a number, what a specific Afghan is suffering there. But still, what we know from the news and what we know from our friends, the healthcare is absolutely collapsing. It's estimated that more than 90% of hospitals will be closed at the end of this, at the end of the Afghan year, which will be almost in March or June of 2022. So it's almost collapsing, which is a huge crisis. And the only way that the aid was transferring to the country, the financial system, that's also not working now. So it's very hard for international communities and international NGOs to transfer aid to Afghanistan. That's another big issue that they're getting into trouble from that. So yeah, that's the only thing that we can say in terms of a big terms, that yeah, Afghanistan is in a huge crisis. Everything is collapsing, financial system, banking, everything. But and I personally, I have very little hope for rebuilding it. But still, when I'm getting in the discussions like this and I see amazing people like you, this gives me like a little sense that we still have something to do. We still have like little gaps that we enter there, and we still have gaps, and we still have fine opportunities for working back for Afghans and work for them. So thank you very much. Thank you for all of you for coming, for supporting. It's very nice to see all of you.
Thank you. And next we'll have our second Afghan student, Ali Shahidi, who is a graduate student at SIU also, but he is in the School of Psychological and Behavioral Sciences, where he works with Dr. Usha Lakshman. You will have to pronounce the name. Previously, he worked with the Afghanistan Ministry of Rural Rehabilitation and Development as a research advisor, and with NATO as a translator and interpreter. He has been an independent women's rights advocate in Afghanistan since 2012. Ali has also co-authored a paper on the Taliban's information war, which focused on the Taliban's tactical use of frames. So please join me in welcoming Ali Shahidi.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for being here. I'm quite grateful for having the opportunity to speak about Afghanistan, quite a very sensitive and emotional and personal subject for me, because the past 6 months or so and the turn of events in Afghanistan have impacted me and the rest of our people quite deeply. And the stories of displacement that you hear, there are hundreds of thousands, or probably over 1 million Afghans in the past year have been displaced internally and to the rest of the world. These stories of loss, trauma, and grief you hear of Afghans, they're actually not very new to us. These stories have been part of our narrative for a long time. Just within my own lifetime alone, my family and I, on 5 occasions at least, have been forced to flee, pack our life, and run away with a hope to find a new home, a hope that was soon broken. We were forced to flee during the Soviet War, during the Civil War. We were refugees in Iran for 12 years, where we were treated as second-class citizens. I could not go to the school as the Iranian kids, but I had to go to a different school where there were only Afghans and run by Afghans. And 9/11 could mean so many different things to different people, but for us, it was a return, it was a call to return home. In 2002, when 9/11 happened and the US came to Afghanistan and ousted the Taliban regime at the time, my father seized the opportunity to return back to Afghanistan and to build our new home. Back then, in early 2000, the conditions of life were very miserable. When I walked in Kabul in 2002, it was nothing but scraps of war. The buildings and walls had holes in them from gunfire and artillery. But to us, that was the closest thing to a home. And life back then was extremely impoverished. My siblings and I worked 14 hours a day weaving carpet. And by the end of the month, when we finished our carpet, that was the only source of income we had. And by the end of the month, when we finished our carpet, the only paycheck we had was $80 for a family of 6 people. But in the past 20 years, we worked so hard. Afghanistan had a unique opportunity to rebuild and reconstruct and move toward a better and hopeful future. With the support of the world, the UN, the US government, Afghanistan had a unique opportunity in the past 20 years, and we achieved tremendously. We made tremendous progress in the past 20 years. And my family and I were part of that progress. But the progress did not come easily. It was full of challenges. It was a bumpy road. I will give you an example from my own family. My sister was in an abusive marriage. And when I found out that she was being tortured and physically beaten, I decided to have her divorced from that relationship. But it was not an easy effort. We had to fight against a court system that believed beating women is okay. In fact, they called me a disgrace for doing that. We worked so hard to fight not only with the court system, but also with the religious elders of our community. Even with our own relatives. One of my aunts came to my house and slapped me on the face and called me a disgrace, that I'm dishonoring the norms of our society. They thought it is okay and she should stay silent. But that was not okay for us. We didn't give up. We fought, and my sister divorced. That experience empowered me and my sister. We both became adamant defenders of women's rights because we knew that is not the only, my sister is not the only person going through that. It's thousands of other Afghan women going through even worse plight and situation. So we became part of the civil society, became activists. My sister pursued her dream. She became a fashion model. She went on TV. She was an outspoken of women's rights publicly, and she wanted to be a role model for other Afghan women, that the public space and the public roles belong to all of us. And we should go out and take advantage of our roles and participate in the society. But all of that effort did not come easily. My sister has been harassed. She has been threatened. She was attacked. She was beaten up. She was almost abducted and killed. These were all the causes of our displacement and living in a state of perpetual paranoia. But we never wanted to give up, and we never gave up. We continued to fight. My other younger sister became one of the first women who drove a car in the city of Kabul. She was chased by gunmen a couple times, but she always told me that, Ali, I want to be behind the wheels and drive, and I want to show all other Afghan girls that you can do too. This space belongs to all of us. And we fought very hard, and we achieved a lot. By 2020, we had Afghan women as mayors, as governors, as parliament members, as politicians, as ministers. 30% of the parliament were occupied by the Afghan women. Early 2000, we barely had anyone with high school degree. In 2020, over 100,000 women were in colleges and universities. And now all of these achievements are gone. Concepts such as equality and women's rights do not have any place in the worldview of a Taliban. Taliban do not recognize this. If you look at their administration right now, it's a small single group of people. Ethnic minorities are not represented. Political diversity is not represented. Women are not represented. None of this. And they're not going to change either. They're not willing to change. The people that they have appointed right now to run their offices and to police the city are people who, in the past 20 years, did nothing but move from valleys to plot attacks and fight. They never had schooling, formal schooling or education. They were fighters. And now they run the administration. We can't expect equality from them or support for women's rights from them. But it's really important that we stand with the Afghan people and to be a voice for them. Because right now, Afghans do not have the chance. They're being oppressed. No one can protest. Since Taliban took over, over 60% of Afghan media closed. And the ones that operate right now, they operate under the fear of the Taliban. It is really important that we do this, and I'm very grateful. But it's really important to keep in mind that we can't let all of those achievements just vanish and go away. I think we should continue to stand next to the Afghan people and be their voice and continue to support them and do not let those achievements go away. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's sobering to hear these remarks, but we also do think that we can be allies with the Afghan people, and there are things that we can do to help. And one of those things is something that Ronnie Laforge from the city of Carbondale is going to talk about next. So I will invite Ronnie to come up.
Hello, everyone. So I serve as the public relations officer for the city of Carbondale. Since I've been in this role, we've been mostly in the pandemic, but within the past 6 months or so, I've really gotten the chance to be able to get out into the community. And one of the first things that I found myself lying awake at night thinking about was the work of CARES. And CARES stands for the Carbondale Area Interfaith Refugee Support. It's a group of volunteers here in Carbondale that was started back in 2015, around 2016, in response to the Syrian refugee crisis. This is an outgrowth of the Carbondale Interfaith Council, but they were dormant from 2018 to 2020 due to the lack of refugees settling here. So I began working with CARES, as I mentioned, about 6 months ago in September of 2021, shortly after the US government pulled out of Afghanistan. Those involved with CARES previously, they all jumped into action. One of those was our city manager, Gary Williams, who served on the steering committee for CARES, along with Cindy and several others that I see. Gary expressed to me in his office that it was very important that we support the work of CARES and do what we can to welcome refugees to Carbondale, because as you can all imagine, Carbondale is in a perfect position to welcome Afghans. We are a very welcoming community. We already have an established group of, we've got the mosque, we have the Hindu temple, we have a bunch of religious organizations that want to band together and just show love to these people. So in September of 2021, Governor Pritzker's office contacted municipalities throughout the state of Illinois asking what capacity was available in each community to house refugees there. So in response to the governor's call, the city of Carbondale committed to partner and be a landing spot for some of these families. As I mentioned, we're perfectly positioned for this, as we have an already thriving international community, an abundance of available housing, jobs, public transportation, and international resources through SIU. Since September, when CARES began meeting again, the city of Carbondale worked closely to help identify resources to make resettlement in Carbondale possible for any Afghan families that would settle here. We also helped identify opportunities that we have available for refugees who may choose to move here. So fast forward to today, the US State Department has created something called the Sponsor Circle program, which enables groups of individuals to form sponsor circles and provide initial resettlement assistance to Afghans as they arrive and begin rebuilding their lives in the United States. The sponsor circle consists of a minimum of 5 adults who undergo background checks, mandatory training, and pledge to provide initial financial support and resettlement services to Afghan newcomers. So these services might include things like securing housing or providing for basic necessities such as clothing, groceries, household furnishings. And we are, the sponsor circles are assisted. They must raise $2,275 per Afghan member, family member, 60% of which must be in hand before the application is filed. The US government will provide some money to ensure that the arriving Afghans have enough money to get established. Several churches here in Carbondale, including the First Presbyterian Church and St. Francis Xavier, have formed sponsor circles or are in the process of doing so and are just waiting to be certified. And we have many organizations and churches within Carbondale who are just hoping to follow their lead. So how can you help? That's really the whole point of me being up here. There is a flyer on your table, as has been mentioned, and it says in big letters, how to help CARES. So there are 3 different ways that we have identified right now. So financial support to continue doing the work that we're doing, and that money will be used once Afghan families are here to help support them and get the basic necessities that they would need. So donations can be sent to the Carbondale Interfaith Council. That's the first way that you can help. We also are encouraging anyone who maybe has a group of 5 friends that are passionate about this topic to consider forming a sponsor circle, or maybe talking to your church or your work about potentially helping fund a sponsor circle. Because like I mentioned, it is $2,275 per family member to be located here through that sponsor circle program. The third one is to join us during our monthly meetings. We're identifying ways each month, work that needs to be done to help these families get located here. So please join us during our monthly meetings. We are going to be posting updates on our Facebook page about when those meetings are. I would have put the date for the next meeting, which I believe is February 23rd. But at the time that I made this flyer, we didn't know if we were going to be in person or virtual. So please check there. And if my office number is also on this flyer, if I can get your email address, if you just send it to me, I will make sure that you get the link for this meeting. So as mentioned, there are opportunities that definitely exist here in Carbondale for Afghan families, but it's important that we have everyone's help and support in this, because once these families are here, we need to make sure that they know that they are loved and welcomed here, and that Carbondale is a place where they can settle in and feel completely safe. When the time comes also, we will also need volunteers to assist with a lot of the daily tasks of having these refugee families here. Like I was mentioning, the sponsor circles, they're gonna help with a lot of those daily tasks, but we don't want it to just be on the 5 individuals that are there when there are so many people in the community who have offered their support. So please join us at some of those CARES meetings. We're in the early processes of trying to figure out how to collect volunteer names that may be able to help once these families. In closing, I just want to say that the city of Carbondale is very excited about the prospect of having new residents here who will contribute to our community, and we hope that everyone will join us in making them feel very welcomed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ronnie. So at this time, we'd like to offer the opportunity to you to ask questions. You know, we've heard about the resilience of the Afghans. We've heard about the partnership between the UN agencies and the Afghan people and trying to help them with their development. And we've heard about some things that you can do here locally to support these Afghan families. But if you have questions for any of the panelists, I would invite you to ask them.
I have a question.
So one of our panelists wants to start with a question. Go ahead, Dr. Ruffner.
The button.
There we go.
So when you say when these families are expected to be here, do you have timelines, like this fall, summer? When will that group of 4 volunteers be needed?
I think the person that could best answer this question is Cindy.
So we have filed for our first sponsor circle, and that sponsor circle was certified this past week, which means that we are now in the process of being matched with a family, and we anticipate having our first family in Carbondale within the next 2 to 3 weeks. So it will be very soon. And we have identified a home for them, and we are collecting donations for that home right now to furnish it for them. Yes. Yes.
How many families?
We have requested a family of 5 to 6 in this first sponsorship circle. Jim Dooley was here, but he may have stepped out of the room. I believe he's working with a group from the Catholic Church that is also sponsoring a second family of 4 to 5. The city of Carbondale, in their survey, I believe, identified that we could host about 100 people total, not 100 families, but 100 people. So there's certainly room to sponsor more Afghan families. And the idea was that if we brought multiple families to Carbondale, we could build a community here for them and they would not feel so isolated. Yes.
I'm asking this on behalf of the Zoom chat. Someone said, Cindy, can you please repeat the questions that they're said?
Okay, I will repeat questions as they are asked. Yes, Helen?
So my question is for this Afghan. That's one problem, but what about the internally displaced families? What kind of assistance, or are any NGOs in operation in Afghanistan, since all the financial institutions and this knowledge of those systems are not quite functional the way I understand.
So the question, the question asks what assistance is being provided to people who are still in Afghanistan, but who are internally displaced within the country. And it's a question for our students from Afghanistan.
Thank you very much for the question. Yeah, there are some NGOs like that they're related to UN cell, so UNICEF. Organizations are operating inside the country and they're providing cash assistance for people that they need them very immediately, but they're very limited and they're offering them for very limited people that even does not count. And there are some countries like recently United States provided, I think it was $400 million or $300 million in assistance for emergency situation. And also some countries in Norway, in Europe also provided some cash assistance, but they're very limited and that cannot solve a huge problem. But yes, still there are something going on, and they're still supported by United Nations in most part of the country.
So then what will be the best way for individuals like us? How to
The question is, what is the best way for individuals like us to support whatever efforts are available for people in Afghanistan?
Well, I think what I think too is first there is a huge discussion or debate whether United States and the European countries, which with all of them hold almost $11 billion of reserve money from Afghanistan, which are money from people of Afghanistan, and still the countries do not want to release that. And yeah, they're tempting because if they release this money, the Taliban can use this money for different purposes. But still, I think as an individual, we can use this, we can raise the voices and to find a better ways to somehow transfer this money either through individual NGOs, international NGOs, or United Nations to people that they can use them. If those money are not released, so our financial system is very near to collapse. So as an individual, we can either support them, support the international organizations to deliver those cash from the United States and from Europe to the developers that they need. So maybe the second, there are some small, some major NGOs that they collect donations and then provide food assistance and some kind of assistance in Afghanistan. And there are some kind of organizations that they're operating in the United States, they collect donation here and then transfer that to Afghanistan, then they buy food and stuff there and distribute that to the people that they need. Yeah.
Since we are in the program on the United Nations, that the UNHCR is still working in Afghanistan. They work with internally displaced persons as well as persons who have left Afghanistan. So you can always make a donation to UNHCR.
Question from the Zoom from LAP. Is there pre-arrival training planned in the sponsor circle? If so, what are the main points and how long is
The question comes from our Zoom audience that asks about training before the Afghan families arrive. And yes, if you are a member of the sponsor circle, there is mandatory training that you must take online through sponsor circle staff work. And how long it takes probably depends a little bit on your own knowledge and technical skills. It took me less than an hour, but other folks have said it takes a little bit longer. It depends on the person taking the training. But if you go to sponsorcircles.org, you can learn more about being part of the sponsor circle and you can see the training there. Yes, Cindy?
other gentlemen? Family, and I guess I'm really interested in knowing his sisters and his family.
So I have a question about the Shahidi family and how they
My family are actually in different. Two of the sisters are in the Netherlands. My sister that I mentioned during my talk, from her husband, her and her son, and my other sister that I also mentioned that you're part of they are in the Netherlands at the moment. They are in a refugee camp, and approved for resettlement in the Netherlands, and that's where they are at the moment. Parents are still in Afghanistan, they could not get evacuated. Some of my family members are in Turkey as refugees. And one of my sisters, who was one of my sisters in Netherlands, he moved to the US because he had a book.
Goes back to a long time, like, so it's been like the cycle, and it comes back and forth. I'm really curious about you definitely to work start. Watch out.
it's like a frustration communication, there's always misunderstanding on the part that what is meeting with the community and what has to be done in order to meet some of the priorities according to the perception of the local communities. That's something, so thank you.
Okay. So Olga Widener shared a comment about the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations and the work there relating to food and health that often have to be a precursor to education and other sustainable development goals. Are there a question in the chat?
No, they were just commenting on that.
Okay. All right.
I just have a question.
Yes, another question?
Professor,
Ruffner?
yes, I have a question because I was kind of curious. You mentioned that part of the development there was planting of trees that was done, right? I'm just curious what kind of trees were found.
So if you would come to the microphone, that'd be great.
Well, we planted live trees and we planted trees from Afghanistan. They were Chilgoza pine, balut oak. I'm sure the young men know these species, pistachio. Oftentimes they were fruit trees that we would get from different nurseries, but all local stuff that we could get from that area.
Thank you. Do we have a final question? Yeah, Terry?
This is an IT question. The money that is held, that the Afghan government is not getting. All the government.
So the question relates to money that is being withheld from the Afghan government and where it is located. Do you want to come up and answer that question, Shaukat? Thank you.
We have a central bank, the Afghanistan bank, which holds all the reserve of the private banks, and so it was almost $12 billion at the time that by the end of the 2020 fiscal year, the Central Bank of Afghanistan had that, and a part of that was reserved in the Fed Reserve of New York. So, and a part of that was in Europe. So it was split in two big banks. One was the Fed Reserve of the United States, which was 8.9 billion, I think, and the rest of that was with the European countries. And when the country collapsed, so the first thing that the United States did was just to freeze all the money, and the European countries also freeze the money. And most of those was the money from the commercial banks kept as a reserve with the central bank. And now what they want to, and that, what happened after that, the US dollar, the currency rate against the Afghani rose from 76 until 110, 120. And almost 80% of our economy is, we import 80% of our products, and everything is imported by US dollar. So that immediately just increased the price of immediate needs, and that hurt a lot of people. And that's still a very big challenge. And what the people want is just to release our money. And why the United States and European countries are afraid of that, if we release the money, it's of course Taliban, they will definitely use it for whatever purpose they want.
Is it a violation of oldest international law if perhaps the Fed spend the money through the United Nations to buy wheat and rye rather than send it directly to Afghanistan, where I suppose it went on $95,000.
Well, I personally do not have the exact information from the international law perspective, but if I give my own opinion, what is on the debate, what United States, I think, are working to find the channels that deliver all these funds to the private banks in Afghanistan, and through them to the people that the money is from, the money is, the commercial banks and the central bank are holding. So that's the channel that they're working, and I don't think that there will be other channel safer than that if they directly provide it to the Taliban group and their central bank. But I specifically do not really know what is the international law for that kind of, these two ways, yeah.
Saying that there would be political willingness to move, not by the borders.
But yeah, but I think most of that reserve is from private companies, and they must be like released to private businesses and commercial banks. So I don't think that the Fed Reserve would have the right to use whatever they want to use. The only thing that they are trying to do is to safely transfer the money to commercial banks and through them to businesses. And yeah. Yeah, I think some major corporations, some major companies like the telecommunication companies are still operating. Some big agriculture companies and the traders that they're importing the immediate food, they're still operating. And some businesses that they had money with Afghan banks, but they're not operating here. Their capital. Those are there's no like exact numbers sharing right now, but these are some ideas that we have from people reporting from there, from news agencies, and yeah. I hope I answered the question. Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, I think with that, we will say good evening. I would ask you to join me again in thanking our panelists for their participation and helping us learn a little bit more about Afghanistan. And before we go this evening, on behalf of the United Nations Association, we want to say a special thank you to Pam Umlauf-Brown, who has been our president for these last couple of years and who has done a great job with programming and leading us. And so I'd like to also have us give a round of applause to Pam Umlauf-Brown for her leadership. And we will have a small gift for Pam that we will present with her, but the rest of you are free to go, and I hope you'll join us for another United Nations program in the very near future. So thank you very much. And thank you again to Jennifer Robertson. She's been amazing working with all our technical issues this evening. We appreciate it.